to this day, I tell people in a list of the greatest adaptations of comics to film, you cannot not include Popeye.
Oh, that's my cup.
There's your cup.
I'm just looking at, is there anything here I don't want to be in the frame?
Oh, that's a smart. Oh, it's the same old crap behind me.
Before I record, I'm like throwing things off the desk. Like, no, get that off of here.
Yeah, anyway. Understood.
So
all of your old Maxim magazines from 1998. Oh, just joking.
So you mentioned the podcast with Jerry that you've been doing a couple of times recently, and is it?
Oh, yeah. Well, we already to plugs. We're doing our plugs.
Yeah, why not?
Well, no, it's I mean, we've launched the Tesla City Stories podcast, and about half of the month, because we release something every week, half of the month are actual episodes of the TBC shows that we do live, and then for the other 2 weeks, one of them is me telling history, the stuff I've researched, about the TBC. So that I can do here in my apartment, and I do. It's not video, so thank God. Thank God. I'm sitting there in my bathroom going, the TBC is a blah, blah, blah. And the other one is me and Jerry chatting. It's all behind the scenes stuff of our show. And this one that's coming up this week, in fact, it probably drops tomorrow. We're going to start interviewing our cast because we've got awesome people in our cast. So it's cool. We go over to Jerry's house. We do a little recording and then we put it up there. I wonder if anyone listens or cares. But that's all you do. In fact, it's the same thing with this podcast. It's like, I don't know. I really appreciate, by the way, I will say this to the camera, right to it. Wait, there we go. Thank you, everyone who does listen. And I see the comments, and we've got some regular folks who are always very kind and very appreciative of the fact that, we're just doing this crazy nonsense where it's just us catching up. But if you're enjoying it, I appreciate you. Hello. You'll never get any messages from me because I avoid that shit. But Chad is awesome, and Chad will talk to you. Unless you approach him on the street late at night wearing a mask. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's bad. Do you ever get that, Chad? People on the street going, hey, Prodigious Saps! Woo! It's one of the Saps!
All the time. I very rarely ever, pretty much nobody ever recognizes me from being in Blackguards, too. It's only when I'm wearing one of our T-shirts that I'll get comments
then they're like, oh, man, I love that band.
I love that band,
wait,
really? I've occasionally screwed with people. Like, I don't tell them right away that I'm in the band.
You're like, I like them, too. I don't even know where I got this shirt. I think I don't know, like some sort of Buffalo Exchange thing. I don't even know where I got it.
There's one guy I met at the grocery store as I was checking out the self-checkout, and he's like, man, I love Blackguards and blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh really? Yeah, how'd you find out about it? I was kind of quizzing him at first, and then I finally dropped. He said, well, I'm kind of in the band. And he goes, you're fucking with me. No, don't fuck with me, dude. I'm like, okay. Patrick gets recognized all the time because he's got the rock star hair.
Oh, well, that
he's
that
like,
can help.
7 feet tall. So he's kind of hard to miss.
I am not even screwing with you. There was once I was on the bus here in Portland, and I saw someone on the street here with a Zsu-Zsu Petals t-shirt on. I don't know how that happened. And they appeared to be, maybe 30s. So I'm like, did you see us when you were a baby? And I mean, I didn't understand how that could have happened. But since I was on a bus and we were passing by, I was just sort of like, I couldn't even get off and go, I was in that band in Houston, Texas. How do you even, what?
You're chasing him down the street. Hey.
Come back, recognize me. Remember I had hair. It was really long. I had really long hair.
And there actually is, I'm going to link to this. There is actually a full performance from a reunion show at Royal Jelly.
Yeah, I've seen those clips.
It's great. It sounds good.
It's fun, and that was the crazy reunion show where we had everybody that has ever been in the band like get up there. It's like for a while we had Derek Holbrook up there on keys, and we had Dwight on keys, and Jerry on keys, and we had multiple bass players and Matt Krochak. So it was a lot of fun. I do remember that night. That was awesome. And it was also not in my tux, because by that point, 2 years after we'd broken up, that tux had been destroyed. There was no, I wore the top hat, but I was like, yeah, that tux was gone.
Was it the same tux you wore at work? Was it?
No, we didn't really. We wore black pants and dress shirts. I would wear a different tux coat because I like a tux. I like a tux, but it wasn't the one with tails. I never did tails at River Oaks Theater.
Okay.
The tux with tails was one I had from literally my high school prom that my girlfriend at the time had bought for me after prom. She thought I looked really good in it, so she bought the tux. Always get a rich girlfriend, Chad. That's my recommendation. So that was the one I wore on stage in Zsu-Zsu Petals, and wore it till it literally fell apart pretty much, and also tore it up on purpose at the end of our last show, thinking, I'll never wear this again. And then we did a reunion, and then I stapled it together. But the Royal Jelly Show was, yes, it was very much, I was pre-Kylo Ren. It was the second reunion show where even that gag couldn't work anymore because the pieces were gone. So that was the second reunion show at Royal Jelly.
What about the top hat?
The top hat I still have.
Nice.
Back there, yeah. I love that top hat. I just take care of it. And I have had opportunities to wear it since. But no one goes like, oh, God, is that Brendan Jones, formerly Zsu-Zsu Petals?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I know. The fame is hard. But I do, like I've said before, I envy you, not the like recognition thing, but man, you're still living the dream. I love that you're just still, you're making music and you're living off of it. That just impresses the hell out of me.
Living off of it.
Well, I mean, it's not a hobby for you. It's your job.
Right. Yeah. I've somehow managed to squeeze by without a day job for past 14 years, whatever it is.
Jeez, it's so jealous.
I am very fortunate. We're all very lucky. I'm also very lucky to have the bandmates that I have who are equally as cool people, insane.
But again, I've never met them.
Yeah. Well,
I think you and I have only met a couple of times, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that time that you came by. I was at Star Pizza, and you walked by, and you're like, "You gonna finish that?" And I was like, "Dude, if you're that hungry, go ahead."
Yeah.
I remember that. That was good times. I miss Star Pizza. Can you box one up and send it this way?
Oh, that is one of the things we were very fortunate to still have in Houston. They're still around.
I'm glad
they're
it's still going.
Fucking awesome. Yeah, they're great.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm glad that is one thing that has not changed. 59 Diner is gone. House of Pies is still around, but they're not 24 hours anymore.
What?
Thank you, pandemic. Yeah.
That's a post-pandemic
I think so, yeah. They also got hit by a fire. That was before the pandemic.
I had heard about that. Every now and then I get Houston news. Every now and then it's like, I signed the petition for the River Oaks Theater. I was like, don't tear that down. I heard about the fire at the House of Pies, and I was like, no. And it's like, it's still okay. I'm like, yeah. I haven't been to Houston in so long.
Yeah.
So long.
Yeah.
Maybe 2003?
Yeah. Was it when y'all were recording the album?
Yeah. And when we came back for the album release show.
Oh,
yeah.
When was that?
I think that was 2003. He said with a squeaky voice. I think
that's
that
right.
was 2003.
I think somewhere around. I think because I was playing a show. I think.
You were not there, and we all cried.
That's right.
But that's okay. Speaking of nostalgia, which is this show, and we also get excited about things to come. By the way, new Quantumania trailer dropped, and it got me just so pumped.
Yeah.
Marvel, just even their trailers, they do it right. Maybe I am a Marvel zombie at this point. I can still look at their movies and say, this was not great. This was good. This was an excellent choice. But generally speaking, the standard of quality as far as the movies they make, their casting, all that stuff. It's so high. I just sit there going, we're lucky, man. Us nerds are lucky.
I kind of felt like they showed a little bit too much in that latest trailer. It's like you get a lot more of the plot than I was really wanted to know.
Yeah, I figure, I mean, the whole thing
that
seems to be boiling down to, though I do love the fact that Scott Lang, the most inconsequential of the Avengers, is Ant-Man, which is kind of great, but this movie launches the next really big, scary stuff in their universe, Kang, and it looks like it's really serious, and it's all based on a Faustian bargain. Like, what would you do to get that time back? It's like, you do this thing for me, Scott Lang, and I will give you time that you missed with your daughter. So it's like Mephistopheles and Faust, like, what would you do? And it's possible Scott Lang will be responsible for a lot of terrible stuff. It would be interesting to see Paul Rudd play Ant-Man as this guy racked with guilt as all the Kang movies start coming out. He's like, it's all my fault. I did this. There
are people theorizing, too, that he dies in this movie.
As John pointed out, he goes, name a Marvel movie that comes out where people don't go, oh, this is one where he dies.
Right, yeah.
And that's true of every one of them, because the trailers will always show you the hero going down or something, getting beaten, and they're like, yeah, that's it. That's it, because he wants out of that contract. Bye, Paul Rudd. Bye. I think they are setting up. Bye. This could be where they kill. I would be willing to bet this is where they kill off possibly Ant-Man Classic, as in Hank Pym, maybe Michael Douglas, and Michelle Pfeiffer, even though we just got her as Jan, the original Wasp. So it's possible they might die, sacrifice themselves. And they are clearly setting up Cassie, Scott's daughter, to be Stature, who she is in the Young Avengers. So, yay!
Yeah.
I'm all about the thing I do like in the comics. These characters are all ageless. We're going to have Hank Pym and Scott Lang and Cassie, and somehow age differences won't matter. They'll just always be there until a writer kills them off, and then somebody else brings them back, and we're youthful now. How'd that happen? I don't know. Comics.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about the Marvel movies is they're giving us solid takes on all their classic characters, but they are thinking in real world terms. People age. They've killed off Tony Stark. Steve Rogers, we actually don't know if he's alive or dead, but he's clearly retired because he's an old dude who looks a lot like Joe Biden. If you look at that makeup job they did on Chris Evans and Infinity War, you're like, oh, so our new president was Captain America. But so they do that, and they let the new characters come in. And I'm excited for a new Avengers that has Sam Wilson, Captain America, and Rhodey, War Machine. But we're also probably going to have the newbies. We're going to have Ms. Marvel, and who knows? We might even end up with a Miles Morales Spider-Man at some point. I'm just like, bring it on.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I got cheated. I got the classic characters. Thor has a daughter now. He's off and doing stuff in the wherever. He may or may not ever show up again. I'm fine. Just keep those characters coming.
Of course, we still have Fantastic Four and the X-Men coming, which I'm so excited for to see what they do with this. I know
everyone's crazy excited for a new X-Men, and I am too. I love the X-Men. But there's something about the Fantastic Four because they've never been done well.
Yeah.
I mean, they just haven't. And I don't put that blame on anybody particular shoulders. I know they tried with those two movies. That third one, the reboot, was
Fan-four-stick, as it's often derogatorily referred to.
Fan-four-stick. It was not good. But the thing is that they just haven't been done well, and they're so important. They are what started Marvel, technically.
Yeah.
It's like without them, we wouldn't have had Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, the X-Men, all that. And they're corny, but they're still important, and they're great. And the idea of a family, of superheroes, a family of adventurers with distinct personalities and their little gripes and all that stuff. I'm like, I just want that. And one of those guys stretches. By the way,
I had a dream about Mr. Fantastic.
This is my audition for Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too that when John Krasinski appeared as Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Obviously he's only in the movie for maybe a minute, but we don't really see him use his. We do see him use his powers, but it's very like understated. Like he just kind of into frame when he first shows up.
Yeah,
not when
and then when he starts fighting for half a second, because he kind of jumps in front of everybody to confront, Wanda, and then she just turns him into spaghetti.
And he's gone. Yeah,
yeah.
So they've been very like it feels like Feige's like holding back. It's like you just wait, people. Like here's some Krasinski for you because you asked for him, but there's more coming. I will
say I do think that stretching powers, because they put money into those other Fantastic Four movies, but stretching powers seem to really task VFX people, where it's like this is hard to make it look good, to make it look real. And also, in comics, it is just so a visual medium where the artist can draw anything. I always wondered about every time they would draw Mr. Fantastic, like I have to get somewhere really fast. So he would stretch himself up to like the height of a skyscraper and do this like walk where his leg is 2 miles long. And I'm like, great. Physics still exists though, buddy. It's like, how are you balancing as you do that? That's weird. And where's your weight going when you're slapping down a human-sized foot on a 2-mile leg? I don't even get it. But I don't worry about that when I'm reading comics. I think when they're putting it into frame with visual effects that should look real, they're always going, oh God, are we going to have him turn into a big sheet like he's done? Is he going to roll up in a ball? Oh God, how are we going to do that? They're sweating it. They're like, fiery guy? No problem. Put that man in flames. Not a problem. Invisible lady? Easiest thing in the world. She's just not there. The Thing, I mean, actually, are you a suit versus a CG guy?
I think they should do CG. I mean, the suit that they did in those movies was impressive, what they did.
It was impressive what they did. But it takes a stature away also.
Yeah.
Unless they did a really good suit and then digitally made him bigger, like, size distortion, like from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Where it's like just a guy in a suit, but we made him bigger in every frame. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be missing out on a lot of stuff that they could do with the character if they try to do it practical, and I sincerely doubt they're going to do it 100% practical again.
One of the things with I agree. One of the things with the fan theories, because we listen to fan theories, you and I, because we're nerds. And I think I had said the same thing once it was announced. We've got Fox, we've got Fantastic Four back, great. Is I sat there going, well, I think it would be awesome if the quantum realm that they're dealing with isn't really from the comics. It's like, couldn't that also be the negative zone, which is so intrinsically a part of Fantastic Four? And I was like, what if, which is a great show and an excellent comic as well. What if, when we get the Fantastic Four, what if they were never native to the MCU universe?
Yeah.
They came from their own. What if they show up and they are actually from the 1960s, where they're so classic FF? Because you would get, these are brand new people in this universe, but Reed Richards is like, oh, well, I knew a Tony Stark, but different Tony Stark from yours. And so the world wouldn't know them. And they would be fish out of water because they would be in a 60s frame of reference. You'd probably still have Reed Richards smoking a pipe and stuff. I love this idea where it's like, let's not update them. In fact, let's retrograde them. Yeah. And they could still be the amazing team and they prove themselves and the world's like, Jesus. But I don't know about Dr. Doom.
Do you think that because I love this has been that's a theory that's been thrown around ever since they first got the rights back. Wouldn't it be cool if they came from the '60s somehow, and then got transported to the
them
MCU?
going around in the classic Fantasticar, the one that's shaped like a bathtub. Oh,
do you think that they should do like they did with Captain America, that the first film is set in their original time, and then they come? Because I would love, if they're going to do that, man, let's stay in the 60s for a while. Let's have an adventure in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, yes. If they
even if it's not the MCU 60s, I don't care.
If they don't shoehorn them into the post-credit scene of one of the movies and then actually give them their own movie and then have them show up, that would be great. If their origin movie or whatever, their first movie takes place in classic 60s in their universe, maybe Doom follows them into this world. Maybe the Latveria in the MCU never had a Victor Von Doom, and he shows up like, wait, I'm the king of this place. And they're like, no, we've never had a Von Doom. I mean, I would love all that stuff where it's like, shit, our paradigm is totally weird. Where's the Baxter Building? There is no Baxter Building. Fuck you! Because we all know in those classic adventures of the FF, they often would say, fuck you!
Right.
Thing would say it's clobbering time, and then it was either Sue or Johnny would say, fuck you!
And I would argue for having the origin story again, because this is a popular thing now. It's like, oh, we've got the origin story already. They didn't do one for Spider-Man.
But they've never done it good.
There's talk like or James Gunn has already said he's not going to do an origin story for this new Superman. They're just going to jump into his early years.
We all know.
But for Fantastic Four, because, as you say, it hasn't really been done right yet. I want to see that origin, and I want to see it done intelligently.
Hells yeah. I mean,
the first Iron Man, one of the best origin stories ever done for a comic book movie.
And period. Honestly, that's one where I was surprised. I mean, I know that you can swap out war for terrorism and Chinese communists but I was just really impressed where it didn't feel like they grafted it into a different era. It was the exact origin story from the old comics, but they made it fit into the modern world so well. I was surprised. I was like, wow, because you read that old origin and it's cheesy. He's out there and it's a communist warlord guy, and Tony steps across a tripwire and sets off a trap, and it blows him up, and he's got shrapnel in his heart. But all that stuff worked, man. So yes, put in the right hands, giving it. I mean, they did try again in the first of those movies. It just didn't work. But I love the idea of, yes, why are Ben and Reed such good friends? They've known each other for years, but they're diametrically kind of opposed. Smart guy and jock guy. But they got each other's backs. You got Victor Von Doom at college, the brilliant dude, but he will not be talked down to by Reed Richards. He sets up his own experiment that backfires, and it's Reed tried to warn him. All that stuff. I love that shit. And then getting into that ship without authorization because they've got to, well, if they do it in the 60s, we have to beat the commies into space, and up they go. And if the cosmic rays, when they're exposed to them, if they don't go tack, 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 then I'm out. I always love that in all the origins, the sound effects of the cosmic rays, which are also drawn, which I think is always hilarious because you would not see cosmic rays, but Jack Kirby drew them as like little bullets of light, and then it's always tack, 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 tack.
Would it sound something like this?
No, that's when Colonel Steve Austin is jumping over a fence.
That's actually a stock sound effect I got from some Super Friends stuff. It was one of many. They used it in a bunch of stuff. There's also this one, which I've been using at the end of the show's last 2 episodes.
Oh man, do I love that one. Sometimes that would be when it's similar to the one where, the logo would spin out and spin back when they were changing locations.
Yeah.
It's like, that's enough with the Legion of Doom. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice.
Right.
Ted Knight, he basically did every voice on Super Friends.
Yeah.
I think he also did the voice of Wonder Woman. I could be wrong.
So what was I going to say? Oh, you know what would be cool too with the Fantastic Four, since they could do this now actually a lot better than they could before No Way Home came out. It was one of my favorite, original comic things is when Spider-Man in his first issue, right?
Oh, I love this too.
He goes to the Baxter Building to meet the Fantastic Four, and they're like, "Who are you?" And they start fighting.
Amazing Spider-Man.
They could do that now with where he is now, where Tom Holland Spider-Man
where he is
they
now.
Could do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For those who are not up on it, though, at this point, if you're watching this podcast, I'm now going to mansplain to you, or Brendan-splain to you, that in Amazing Spider-Man #1, not Spider-Man's first appearance, but his first issue of his comic after he got out of Amazing Fantasy. It's such a great idea that Stan Lee and or Jack Kirby and or Steve Ditko had, where Spider-Man is just, he was always a struggling teenager. He made no money off of being Spider-Man, and he always was worried about Aunt May not getting her medicine or paying the rent. So it's a great idea. He shows up at the Baxter Building, breaks through their defenses in order to show off, and they're like, well, you're still an intruder. It's like, of course we attacked you. But he's like, I'm here as a friend. And they're like, okay, Spider-Man, what's up? He goes, can I join you? Do you guys have like a health plan?
Yeah.
Are you opposed to being a Fantastic Five? And they're like, we don't make a lot of money off of this. Reed's patents are what we live off of. And Spider-Man's like, oh, okay. Well, I'll see you later. And then he and Johnny Storm become buddies. And then they show up in each other's comics.
Yeah.
Oh man, do I love early Marvel.
So that would be awesome if they could do that.
That would be
I would not be surprised if they do that. Yeah.
You just said doo-doo.
I know. I was trying to figure out how to.
You said doo-doo.
I couldn't get away from it. It was
switching topics a little bit. Last night you were like, well, what are we going to talk about? And then we brought up, why did you bring up Popeye?
Oh, okay. Because Blackguards was just on tour. Wasn't really a tour. We just drove out and played some shows in Arizona and came back.
That's a tour.
Yeah. But we, the last date on the tour was in Bisbee, Arizona.
Oh, right.
Where our friend, comedian Doug Stanhope, lives, and he had invited us to come play there.
Stanhope.
Do you know who he is? Cool.
I know who he is, and he's very funny. I mean, I don't know him, but I know of him, yeah.
We met him through a mutual friend in Omaha, and Doug actually came on our podcast a couple years ago. Yeah, and he's so cool. We were just having a chat. At one point he was actually sort of interviewing us on the show. But we kept in touch all this time, and Patrick actually went out to visit him one time last year. But this was the first time I was in Bisbee, and I'd only heard Patrick and Doug rhapsodizing about it, because Doug's not from there. He just happened to tour through there one time at one point in his career and fell in love with the town and decided to move there. And having been there now, I understand why. It's just a really cool little town.
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
But it's an old mining town, so it's not in use anymore. But there's a copper mine there that was which was active from like 1877 all the way through 1977. Now you can tour the mine and stuff. We didn't do that this time, but so the town was built around this mine, and it's very hilly, mountainous area with a lot of gullies and ravines and steep inclines, and there's this canal that runs through the town, so the houses are kind of built over it and across it and all over the hill. So there's like all kinds of gangplanks and bridges and really steep stairwells and stuff.
Yeah.
At one point we actually walked past somebody who was, I think, buying a coffee from a vendor or something, and I couldn't hear what he said, but he exchanged a joke with Patrick as they're walking ahead of me. But the guy, as he was laughing, and he looked like a Popeye. He had he had something. It was like I had a cigar or something. He was holding. He was like, and
he said, well, blow me down.
Yeah. And I was trying to tell the guys, like, I remember I just said this place reminds me of Sweethaven. That guy there, blah, blah, blah. And they like, We don't know what you're talking about. You fucking nerd. So I immediately
do
thought
your
of the movie.
bandmates humor you a lot, Chad? Do they humor you a lot?
Humor is not the word I would use. Yeah, but anyway, so I loved that movie, and I'd actually, when it first came out, I was fascinated with it, and I actually bought this. I happened to find this.
Oh, I had that.
Yeah, the making of, which came out like right after the movie came out.
Yeah, which avoids a lot of talk of cocaine, but because it was a promotional thing, so they didn't go too much into the drugs there.
But in case the watchers don't know, in case our viewers are not aware, the town that was built for this film is still there. It was built on this
Malta.
This little bay. It was previously uninhabited area of Malta, yeah, where and they built the entire town like way beyond anything they actually needed to film, and it was actually full buildings. It wasn't just prop building front face.
It's unbelievable,
and it's still there. They
built it so well, and that place was so unpopulated that no one messed with it. And then somewhere people, decades later, they're like, we could turn that into a tourist thing. So you can visit Sweethaven. They've preserved it. It's there. And here's the thing I'll say about that movie. Is it weird that a Robert Altman adaptation of Popeye exists? Yes. Is it amazing? Yes. To this day, I tell people, in a list of the greatest adaptations of comics to film, you cannot not include Popeye, because it's not a perfect movie. It has plenty of flaws, but holy hell, he nailed it. He nailed the look, the casting. Obviously the set is amazing. And of course the score is one of my favorites of all time, because Harry Nilsson is a god to me. When it comes to singer-songwriters, I always tend to like the clever people, the funny people. So Harry Nilsson, a Randy Newman, and Elvis Costello. I like the people with wit in their music. Yeah. And so he was the perfect choice. Those songs are earworms, every single one of them.
They're so
every
good.
Single one of them. You're like, oh, well, not the one about Sweet Pea. No, you'll be singing that to yourself forever.
Yeah.
Every song is a fucking banger.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever described Harry Nilsson music as a fucking banger.
Banging, man. Yeah.
No, I love that score. So everything, and if you look, as Robert Altman did when he's like, doing Popeye, you go back and you look at the original Seeger cartoons, actually the comic strips that became the cartoons, and he nailed it so well that a lot of people in 1980, when it came out, it was 80 or 81?
I think it was 80. Well, this book came out in 1980, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was 80.
Yeah.
But when that movie came out, a lot of people were like, that's not Popeye, because they were very familiar with what Popeye became. Popeye lasted so long that he became very homogenized, but the original stuff is so quirky and so weird. And I was like, this did it. Every one of the supporting characters, all the weird inhabitants of Sweethaven and all that, you're like, they didn't make the transition to the more modern Popeye cartoons. But you go back, and originally it was all about the oil family. Popeye did not show up in that comic strip for a long time. It was just about the oils. And Popeye stole the cartoon, the comic strip, because he was so beloved as a weird character. Sorry, I'm rhapsodizing. So
no, this is important.
I love that stuff, and I think that if Altman hadn't run out of money at the end, if the studio had not said, we're cutting that budget, because he did film it, I think, sequentially. So by the time they got to the end of the movie, he had run out of money, and you can tell. The ending is where it just falls apart, and you're like, oh.
Wasn't it? It was the weather was one of the main things that held them up, right? Because I think there was whole entire months that they weren't able to film because the weather was so bad. Yeah, there
was also a big monsoon kind of thing, and which, again, the sets survived. I think some of it had to be rebuilt.
Right.
But that is a thing. But I think mainly it was the studio didn't have a lot of confidence, and there were overages because they were paying those people to just live there for months while they were trying to finish that movie. So they lived in those sets.
Yeah.
That book does have a lot of those stories about, party over at this actor's place tonight, and we're all going to sit around and smoke grass and play guitar. And then the next night, party over at this people's house. And, Robin Williams starting into his, probably well into his initial fun with drugs period. I will say you can't really tell in the performances.
No.
I mean, I know they were partying like madmen, but when they showed up to act, it's you could not have found somebody better.
No.
That's why I say casting across the board.
Yeah.
Across the board.
It's so good.
You just sit there going, wimpy. You're like, and I read the whole thing with, or I saw the commentary, I think, on the recently released Blu-ray where Paul Dooley, who plays Wimpy, is like, yeah, I didn't really know too much about it. And Robert's like going, here, read this, watch these cartoons. He's like, oh, I get it. And he's just the living embodiment of the character.
Right. Yeah.
And Shelley Duvall.
Perfect.
Born to be Olive Oil.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a clip, I think it's from the making of documentary, where Robert Altman says that he insisted that Shelley Duvall play Olive because the studio was trying to throw some other names at him. He's like, I'm not making this movie if you don't let me have Shelley. He put his foot down with that.
Studios always, they always think they know better. But what they're thinking of is commerciality. They're thinking about, we need at least one name in this movie. Well, Robin Williams is hot and undeniably a perfect Popeye. So it's like they probably were sitting there going, what about Farrah Fawcett?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
She's also from Texas, like your Shelley Duvall. It's like, yeah. No, we're going with Shelley. I fucking love it.
I saw an interview last night after we agreed that we're going to talk about this today. I was looking up stuff on YouTube.
After we signed the forms, after the contracts.
I found a really fun interview with Robin Williams on the Dick Cavett Show. I think before they had actually started production on this, and Robin was in the process of doing research and watching the cartoons and trying to perfect his Popeye voice. And he did it a little bit. And it was funny that the voice on there sounded almost like dead ringer for the cartoon voice. But what he wound up doing in the film was a little less, not a full on mimic of that. And I think Robert Altman may have said, you don't have to do an entire impersonation of Popeye. Like do your Popeye basically. But it was just funny that Robin was capable of actually just doing the cartoon voice, Jack Mercer's voice.
A lot of people also complained about, Robert Altman did have this predilection in his films, which he's both praised for and damned for. He loved ambient sound. He did not want cleanly recorded stuff. He wanted to get real sound. So if a seagull flew by, he's not going to go, we'll ADR that later. Well, he didn't want ADR. He wanted to get it where it was. A wind comes by, fine. And he loved filling his soundtracks with other conversation. So some people hate that about Altman films, where it's like, look, if you have a main character and you have to really pay attention to follow what they're saying, because also these other characters are in a room talking about something totally else and I hear them. And I love it because, well, not a lot of people do that, but it's very naturalistic. So with Popeye, people are going, Popeye's muttering almost constantly. We have no idea what he's saying because over there is the tax collector and over here is the chef and all these characters, and they're all talking, and how do I follow it? And I go, again, you found the right guy to do Popeye, because if you watch those original Popeye cartoons, the Thimble Theater, they are constant muttering. Original classic Popeye is doing exactly what Robin Williams is doing in that movie. It's a lot of asides and all that thing, and it's all coming out, and it's just it's down sometimes. A lot of it you miss. You're like, did he just insult somebody? Because it went by really fast.
Robin mentions that in this Dick Cavett interview. He says, like, those are really, really early cartoons. You got to watch those, because he was studying them at the time. Yeah. It's like the constant muttering and stuff. And some of it was like, kind of, if you could catch what he was saying, it was actually pretty naughty. He's like, whoa, did he just say that? And so
I wonder why she's so bow-legged. You're like, what?
Yeah. I love that it didn't surprise me, but I just love that Robin was so into studying the character and trying to capture that aspect of it. Because one of the things that made that,
a lot of the stuff is, a lot of the stuff's in the script, but I also know Robin Williams being Robin Williams and being a freaking genius.
Yeah.
A lot of the muttering stuff is him. I mean, he improv'd a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And, shit, I lost my train of thought.
I don't know. I ain't no physicists, but I know what matters.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that I love that bit. Oh, the thing about the early cartoons, which I think probably lended itself. This is probably where one of the reasons why this became a thing with Popeye is that they would animate the film first, and then they would overdub the voices later. So William Costello was the original voice.
Ooh, I didn't even know that.
You think? Yeah, I did some research. They would track their voices while they were watching the completed animated thing. So he's probably coming up with stuff as he's watching it, and I don't know, like almost like Mystery Theater Science Theater 2000.
It's true. I think a lot of the and because the Thimble Theater cartoons, the Fleischer Studio stuff was real early days of sound cartoons. So after Disney got that rolling, everyone's like, it's new technology, but they didn't have everything nailed down. A lot of cartoons from the 30s, some of the earliest of the sound cartoons, they're almost afraid to leave any dead air because they're like going, no, the gimmick is there's sound. So there's always like whistling going on. It's not just the Popeye cartoons. You watch any cartoons from those periods and it's almost like, because I watched like the Three Little Pigs thing that Disney did, which was also really early, and the wolf is basically just like going, "Where are you? I'll get you. Are you over there? No, don't get us. I'm coming over here." You're like, you can take a breath, right? You can stop for a second. You know that you don't need constant sound. So it is interesting that that's a trope of those days, but it did fit the character of Popeye really well,
right?
And no, I'm sorry. I waited so long for that to get a decent release. I was so happy that it finally came out on Blu-ray. I remember trying because the soundtrack on CD went out of print, and I had not had it. I had pirated it from somewhere.
Yes.
But I wanted a legit copy, and for years, if you ever found that CD, it was like $40 or something. They jacked the price up on used copies of it because it was out of print. And the CD soundtrack still didn't include some of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like didn't include Everything is Food and stuff like that. And finally, I think they did, when they re-released the Blu-ray, the soundtrack came out with all of the songs in it and some of the demos that he recorded. So good.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I had found those demos. The demos, Harry Nilsson's original demos for those songs, have been bootlegged for years. And I think I found them online. It was like one of the news group things. I found it, back when you could download the binary news groups, as they were called, which meant you could upload files with your post. So they would upload bootlegs as torrents, I think. No, not torrents. There was some other format that you would use. You'd have to download all the pieces and then compile it.
Yeah,
to put
I
it
think that's the way the used groups used to work, is that everything had to be broken into much smaller segments, and you'd have to join it all together.
I can't remember what the file extension was. But anyway, so I'd heard those demos, and my appreciation for a song like Blow Me Down, which is the song that Popeye sings when he arrives in Sweethaven at the beginning of the movie. I love, I have no complaints about the film, but you kind of have to hear Harry's demo to really appreciate the song, where he's actually just singing it. Yeah. He does a little Popeye, voices, here and there, but because he's actually singing the song. And when Robin Williams does it, he's more kind of talk singing it.
He's talk singing it,
which is fun.
The whole movie, because he actually could carry a tune, but he's not a singer. But he sells every single one of them, including things like When He Needs Me and the Sweepy song and all that. It's like, lovely little voice, but he's still basically talk singing. And Harry Nilsson famously, until he shredded his voice hanging out with John Lennon, one of the greatest singers of all time.
Yeah.
Just an amazing, amazing voice.
Yeah. And I didn't really... What's that?
He died too soon. I'm just saying, don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs.
It was really... There's a documentary, a really great documentary, but heartbreaking documentary about him that came out a few years ago. And it's very sad. He basically drank himself to death.
He did.
It's almost like, what's the movie with Nick Cage? Was it Leaving Las Vegas?
Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's essentially that story, but over a longer period of time.
He wasn't able to throttle back, and he just gave into it, and even had like a positive turn towards the end of his life that he couldn't. I mean, he still was drinking. He's like, oh no, I'm falling in love with a new person. It's great. Still gonna drink though, and then away he went.
But I didn't really know much about Harry. I mean, obviously I'd read him. I mean, I knew I'd seen the movie and I read about him in this book, but I didn't really know anything about his music. Was that your introduction to
Harry Nilsson?
It was, but it didn't really stick with me. And it wasn't until after he died, unfortunately, that I really started to get into him. It was thanks to my roommates at the time, Paul and Marla. Yeah, Marla was already a big fan of Harry. Me and Paul and I at the time didn't really know much about him. And so
Marla has always had excellent taste. Yeah, shout out to Marla.
Yeah, so she brought him to our attention, and they went out after Harry died. They went out and bought this compilation, like a multi-disc set of his stuff, and they started telling me, "You gotta listen to this stuff, man."
I think it's like the Harry Nilsson anthology or something.
Probably,
I've got it's
it's
like
2
or 3 discs. It's great.
But they were telling me, it was Marla at first was telling me, he's like, you got to listen to this. He's got this, because she knew I was a big Beatles fan, and obviously Harry was as well, and friends with him as well, and had some great stories about them.
Because they loved him.
Yeah.
They're like, in interviews, like going, as an American artist, we like a lot Harry Nilsson. We're addicted to him. Yeah. Yeah. And he's great.
But she was trying to get me to listen to, she brought up his cover of You Can't Do That, where he... off his first record, where he blends in a lot of other quotes from other Beatles songs.
He basically does like a mashup of different Beatles stuff.
It's very clever.
My babe, don't buy me presents. Yeah. How can you laugh when you know I'm down?
Yeah,
beep, 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 yeah.
It's so cool.
He does the whole thing.
And that was clever. But the thing that really got me is Paul, knowing my sense of humor, he'd listened to the whole disc, and he homed in on Joy, which is off of I think it's either Nielsen Smilson or Son of Smilson. I can't remember which album that's off of, but Joy, which is essentially a send up of a country song, like one of those talking countries.
The thing that again, he could write a beautiful ballad, but he also just had this like mischievous 8th grader sense of humor. So the whole idea, like, one day I met a girl named Joy. Yeah, it's like she took me for a joy ride. He's doing all these like little. He's doing all these jokes.
You could almost hear him going. And the moment that got me. This is the moment that made you fall in love with him immediately. Was when towards the end of it's at the end of the last verse, where he goes, things went good, and he went bad. He went good, bad. Good, bad, good, bad. Good, bad. Which is exactly that. Good, bad, good, bad. Which totally, that was my dad's sense of humor. That's exactly the kind of stuff that he would do. So I just to say, I love this guy. And he wasn't, that's like you say, he wasn't even showing off his voice in that song. It was just, that song was all about a sense of humor. Yeah. And do you have other songs like Remember Christmas or, what's another really good one? Spaceman.
What's amazing about,
his voice is just
I think Spaceman was probably his first big hit. And then, of course, Everybody's Talking at Me from the soundtrack of Midnight Cowboy was his big hit. But what's funny is Everybody's Talking at Me, he didn't write. One of his other biggest hits, which is still beautiful, is his version of Without You.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't write that either. But he destroys. I mean, that one, oh, God. So a lot of the ones that made him the big money weren't his originals. I mean, he also had plenty of his own songs that charted. But it always struck me as funny that, Into the Fire, he didn't write Into the Fire either.
Yeah. Oh, he didn't write Jump in the Fire?
Jump in the Fire. I don't think he did.
Really? Okay.
I might be wrong actually on that one, but essentially it's just that when he sang a song, he made it his own, and the ones that he wrote, which is why you definitely want to get his albums.
Yeah.
It's just a perfect melding of a personality to music, similar to, like I was saying, like a Randy Newman, where the wit and the personality is inescapable with the sound that he's making. And yeah, if he wanted to get schmaltzy, you're going to cry when you hear that song. You know, I mean, yeah, can't living is without you. And then at the end, he's like, can't live, can't get
It's
anymore.
amazing what he does.
Where, yeah, his range, and you're just like, what the hell? I did that karaoke once, and when I hit those notes, people are like going, oh, shit. Because I went
Did you
for
really?
it.
I want to hear you sing that.
Oh, no, it's all right. I got there. I was really impressed with myself. And then afterwards, when my testicles dropped again, I was very grateful. I love that. I just love that guy. And he was taken too soon. And he also had a real theatrical bent as well. A lot of his songs are story songs, which I also love. So him being asked to do Popeye makes total sense. I mean, obviously now, or since you became a fan back in the day, you've probably heard or seen The Point, right?
I have actually never seen The Point.
What?
I need to watch it. I know.
The Point has been released several times. I mean, as albums with different narrators. Mm-hmm. The Point is a tiny little musical for kids, essentially, but really it's for everybody, that he completely conceived of, with characters in it and little songs, and there's a narrator telling you the story. And on the original album, it's just Harry Nilsson himself, and he's very funny. It reminds me a little bit of when you hear Shel Silverstein reading his own poems. So that's great. But then they were like, oh, for the animated version, they had Ringo Starr do the narration.
Right. He was a really good friend of Harry's, yeah.
Yes, of course. I love the end of... at the end of one of his albums, again, I can't remember. Is it Son of Schmilsson, where he does the big sweeping,
most wonderful world in the world,
most wonderful world in the world,
good
and
night,
at the end, I was like, it's like, good night, Richard. He's like, good night, Harry. Good night, Richard. See you next album.
Yeah, I thought that was Ringo actually, and it sounds like him. No, it's the producer. It's the producer, Richard. I forget his name.
I thought this entire time, you're blowing my mind, because of course Ringo's name is Richard Starkey.
I know, I thought it was too. Like, I looked at it's got to be Ringo. It looks like they played for Paul. Check it out, it's Ringo.
Richard.
No, it's the producer, Richard. Yeah, I forget his name, Richard. Anyway, yeah.
So, yes, they did collaborate,
which
on
makes
plenty
sense
of stuff.
because that was the guy. Yeah, and
then there's all the things.
That's the Son of Schmilsson thing at the beginning. I think it's that same album.
Schmilsson, because he did the.
That's Richard too, because he's trying to freak out the producer. That's the skit they did. It's like, Harry, is that you?
Well, it was also to promote his movie, the Son of Dracula thing.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot about
that. That's it's not worth watching. But it's like a magical mystery tour where you're like going, this is a vanity project, and even if you're a huge fan of these people, you're kind of like going, okay, well, at least the music's great.
I guess I don't think I've ever seen that either.
Ringo Starr plays Merlin, and Harry Nilsson plays the son of Dracula. Yeah, it's goofy. It's cool.
I was kind of surprised to learn in that documentary that Richard, I can't remember the guy's last name, but he's in this document. He's in that documentary a lot, and he was heartbroken at the time that Harry didn't. He was really wanted because Nilsson Schmilsson, which was the album that came out before that, which has Without You. Nilsson
Schmilsson was his big hit record.
Big hit, right? So his producer Richard wanted to follow that up with something even better, because he felt like they were both kind of like, this is our Beatles moment. We get to do our Sgt. Pepper, and now we can move on and do the White Album, whatever. They were trying to advance, do something really cool. But Harry just had some other weird things he wanted to do and wasn't really interested in making another pop record. And Richard was really let down by it. There's a lot of great stuff on that record, though.
Oh yeah, Harry couldn't focus. That was always a thing. And Lord knows when I watched that, I kind of, empathize because I'm not the genius that he is, but when you're a creative type and you just get pulled in different directions all the time. Even if someone were to come up with me and say, that thing that you wrote, that's amazing, keep going in that vein, I'd be like, yeah, but I kind of got this other weird idea. So I respect that he was like, well, I don't feel that way. And, it's like, I want to do my album of covers. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, a cover album's okay, but shouldn't you be building on this? And, Son of Schmilson, it's not all amaterial, but again, there's great stuff in there. I think they were always just lucky if he would show up sober to the studio and lay down some tracks. And then he and, John Lennon, when they were doing their lost weekend years of New York partying, and they did their rock and roll album, John Lennon's rock and roll thing. And that was it. That was Harry literally shouted his voice into oblivion.
On Pussycats, yeah.
Not that he sounded bad after. It had lost that unbelievable crystal smoothness. And he was no longer able to hit those notes that he used to be able to hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, take care of your voice also, ladies and gentlemen. That's another thing.
Yeah, Lennon
learn from Harry.
John Lennon said in interviews that the guy was just falling apart in the studio making that album, and it was painful process.
And John wasn't doing too much better either. So that's saying something when John Lennon's like going,
yeah,
I was worried about this.
And part of it too, and as good friends as they were at the time, Harry was really, really nervous to be working with John.
I think they were
so
totally
he may have been
friends.
Over-medicating at the time.
Yeah.
It's weird to think about.
He wanted to not be overshadowed because even though they had produced stuff of his, like the Beatles had, and Harry was totally pals with all of them, it was still a thing where they hadn't worked together. So I think it was more like, oh God, I'm with a god of rock, and I have to bring my A game. And probably John had crazy esteem issues and insecurities, and he was probably sitting there going like, I'll never sound anything as good as Harry Nilsson.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't. You kind of have to go and listen to these albums to get it. But if you listen to John's, like Walls and Bridges, which came out around the same time, Harry appears on Walls and Bridges. Actually co-wrote a song with him on that one. Going Down on Love, I think. He actually wrote the lyrics to that, which is a great...
Oh, really?
What's that?
No, it is a great song, but I'm like, really? He wrote those lyrics?
Was it Going Down on Love? Wait. No, wait, was it's Old Dirt Road. It's Old Dirt Road. That's the one.
It's not Going Down on Love, because I would have believed
he may have,
that.
yeah. But Old Dirt Road is the one with the really weird. The lyrics are kind of funny and kind of funky. Yeah. I think John had some of the words, and Harry had suggested a line, and John was like, "That's great," and he just came out and said, "You're on a roll. Just finish writing the songs." Yeah,
there you go. It's the old Lennon McCartney thing. It's like, I've got a couple ideas you could put in there.
But if you listen to those two albums that he did with Richard Blank, the last
Richard
name
Blank,
I can't remember.
one of my favorites of all the music producers.
Anyway, there's a really clear influence. I think John, not only was Harry influenced by the Beatles, obviously, but I think John was also heavily influenced at that point in his solo career by Harry's work.
Well, again,
you
both
can totally hear it on
very
Walls and Bridges.
slyly funny guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you read any of the, Spaniard in the Works and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That, that's why they got along so well. They were essentially the same guy.
that line from Older Road, say, Hey, Mr. Me, can you... God damn it. Anyway, yeah, the lyrics are so, when you find out that Harry wrote those words, it just makes so much sense.
Of course. I'm going to find that guy's name. You keep talking.
I keep wanting to say Richard Lewis, but I know it's not.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Richard Perry.
Perry. There it is. Sorry, right at the top. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember him from the documentary once I see his picture.
He's all over.
Yeah.
He also produced Ringo's stuff too, which
is.
Can
I just say one thing I do love about Nilsson Schmilsson, besides the fact that every song is a banger? Yeah. I mean, Jesus. All right, gotta get up, driving along early in the morning. The Moonbeam song, Heartbreaker, Down.
Mm-hmm.
That one just tears you up. Without You, Coconut, novelty song, but fun. Let the good times roll. And turns out he did write Jump Into the Fire, so I was absolutely wrong. I'll Never Leave You. These are all great, but I do love the cover. That's the thing. I always love the fact that his big breakthrough album is just a black and white photo of him in his bathrobe standing in a kitchen. It's just so great, where he's just kind of like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Here's my big rock album.
It's a song on the next album, Sonish Milson. Ambush is the one that makes me think of John. I could picture John singing that song.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Ambush is, yes.
It's such a neat
It's a
song.
shame that, I mean, since, they both left us too early, but the fact that there was such a group of mutual respect, because Harry Nilsson loved Randy Newman, so he did an entire album of covers just of Randy Newman.
That's what I was trying to remember earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
That is great.
Speaking of Randy Newman, it's so good.
I know. And it's like, what a drag. If John had been around longer, especially if he were still alive after Harry had passed, there would have been a Lennon album where he just covered Nilsson.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been amazing. Like John doing the Moonbeam song. And somewhere there's a private recording of him just noodling around where he probably did do Nilsson stuff, and we'll never hear it.
You know what's really neat about that, the Randy Newman record, Nilsson sings Newman, is that Randy's actually on it. He didn't sing on it, but he's the guy playing the piano on most of those tracks, if not all of them. They work together to on the song selection and everything.
What I find really interesting about it is great, because Harry gets what Randy does. Mm-hmm. But what's funny is that Harry, when he's singing Newman songs, he's almost imitating him. It's sort of like you're like going, you can just be you, Harry, because like in America you give food to eat, and you're like going, why are you singing like Randy? This is your album doing Randy Newman songs. Yeah. But of course, when he wants to take it somewhere, he just has a much more flexible voice. Because Randy Newman, as great as he is, and he's great, his voice is just, it's got this narrow window. He can't do a lot with it, but it's perfect for what he writes. But Harry Nilsson can, so that was great on some of the classic, like Sail Away, because by the end, Harry Nilsson's like, sail away! And you're like going, oh yeah, Randy could never have done that. Right. Randy's probably at the piano going, shit.
Yeah.
Shit.
I read somewhere too that the song selection was important too, because they wanted to do, they picked topics and songs that had topics that weren't quite as cynical and as Randy's.
Sail Away is one of the most cynical songs ever.
Yeah, I can't remember what exactly the qualities that they were talking about, but there was a specific kind of Randy Newman song that they wanted to put on that album.
Again, for a songwriter like Randy Newman, there's an acidic wit, and there are albums of his like Rednecks where you're sitting there going, that could not be made today, even if you realize he is being blackly cynical. It is dark stuff that he's presenting in this tuneful way, and he's confronting racial issues and rednecks and sort of that whole racist philosophy by portraying them as incredibly stupid people, but singing from their viewpoint. And you're like going,
right.
It was brave that he did that in the 70s. And that if that was released now, no, they would be burning his house down. But the thing is, his viewpoints were always so razor sharp. That said, you get a Randy Newman ballad, it's just like with Tom Waits, another guy like that, where you're like, story songs. And sometimes they will be scathing or make you feel sad or gross, but you want to get romantic, there are Randy Newman songs that are up there with the greatest love songs ever written. And, same with Tom Waits, where you're like going, that guy wrote that? Holy hell. Yeah. So, I got great love and affection for these people.
I wish there were more records like that, so-and-so sing so-and-so type of stuff.
Sure.
I wish we could have gotten more of that from these heroes of ours who have passed on. But it makes me think, the thing it immediately makes me think of is the work that you mentioned, Elvis Costello, the work that he did with McCartney in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Where they got together and wrote a bunch of songs, but they didn't actually put a record out together. And I don't know if that was ever on the table, but I think
they
Paul
traded
was uncomfortable
off
with recreating the John. It was something he was always trying to keep Elvis at bay. Is like, don't make it too much like John, because this is hard for me. They
shared the material, so they both got albums out of it. It's like, one of the greatest late career McCartney albums, Flowers in the Dirt, is greatly comprised of their collaboration. And then Elvis Costello took a lot of those for like his next album. There's some on Spike, which is one of his greatest albums. And you're just sitting there going like, oh yeah. They just like, hey, you're going to use that one? Oh, no, you can have that one. All right.
Yeah.
And they sing backup on each other. Like, cause you do get McCartney and Costello singing together.
Sure, yeah. I think McCartney plays bass on some of them, but you don't really get the what's that? Amazing, right?
Yeah. Why would you play? Why would you have that guy play bass on something?
Yeah, like Veronica,
only one of the greatest bass players of all time.
Veronica, which is probably my favorite song of theirs that they wrote together. I used to cover that.
Nice.
But I know
man,
that
I'd kill to hear you do Veronica.
I don't know if Paul sings that one, but he definitely plays bass on that track, on Elvis's version of it. And the cool thing is, I don't think these have been, some of them have come out, I think, as bonus tracks, but I don't think all of them are. I'm not sure. But I got a bootleg years ago of the demos, the demo tapes that they recorded together, where they actually are singing.
I've heard a couple because they have really come out as like, additional material. Of course, it's really good.
Yeah.
They're just some like songs at a piano.
There's one or two songs that never came out that are on there.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic.
It's simple stuff, but talk about, I mean, Elvis Costello is a cool customer, but he, of course, is also really upfront. If you read his book and so forth, or you read any of his liner notes, which are always books in and of themselves, but it's that guy, he'll tell you whatever. And, but yeah, talk about working with your heroes. I mean, he probably was like, played it off, but he talks about just like, man, my hands were shaking. It's like, that's Paul McCartney right there. Yeah. Where do you even start? But it is great when you hear them just clear voiced with a piano, and they're not showing each other up, but they're both also not pulling back. And you're like, McCartney at that point still could hit any note you want.
Oh. The demo they did for The Lovers That Never Were, is that the title?
Lovers That Never Were, yeah.
It's
the two that I would cover if I played an instrument and was my own, if I were able to do a solo thing. So Like Candy, which is just stupid, clever wordplay, but it's just a gorgeous melody. I love So Like Candy and Lovers That Never Were.
Yeah. And Paul sings his ass off on that song in particular, but they're both singing the demo. You can hear both of them singing, and it's fantastic. It's so good. I know. And it just breaks my heart that they couldn't just put out a record themselves. I kept hoping they would do that, but they never did.
They never did. Just let it go, man. And on that note, yes. we should wrap things up.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Very musical episode. Mainly because very musical episode, and I'm sorry I sang so much. And please don't sue us.
So I'm going to go and watch, which I wish I'd had time to do this before recorded, but I'm going to go watch the.
You're going to go and wash? You really should.
I'm going to watch the extras for Popeye. I bought the digital version of it last night. This one,
nice.
So because I never actually got the Blu-ray you were talking about, so I hope it has all the extras.
I had to have it.
Yeah, someday.
It's okay. Basically, that's Chad's way of saying, hey, listeners, would you please send some money to Chad so we can buy a Blu-ray of Popeye?
Yeah.
Well, goodbye, everybody. Yeah. Have a wonderful time.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening. We'll check you later.